There comes a moment in the life of every empath who has faced the storm of narcissistic abuse when words falter, voices dim, and silence becomes their sanctuary. This silence is not a sign of defeat, but a profound act of self-preservation and spiritual awakening. It is a sacred pause, a necessary retreat from the noise of pain and betrayal, a retreat into the sanctuary of the soul. When the soul is wounded deeply, it does not merely bleed, it shakes the foundation of our very existence. The empath, with their boundless capacity to feel and absorb the emotions of others, finds themselves shattered by the narcissist's relentless assault, not just on their heart, but on their sense of reality. Trust crumbles. The world becomes a labyrinth of mirrors reflecting lies and broken promises. It is here that the empath steps into the silence, not to disappear, but to listen, to the faint whisper of their own truth buried beneath the rubble. This silence is the gateway to transformation. It is the soil in which the seed of rebirth is planted. The journey is not instantaneous. It unfolds in stages, 7 sacred passages where destruction paves the way for renewal. First comes the shattering, where old identities die and the empath mourns what was lost. Then, the surrender, the relinquishing of control, and the acceptance of vulnerability as strength. This is followed by the descent into shadow, where one confronts the hidden fears and fragmented parts that have long been denied. This shadow work is the crucible of growth. It is uncomfortable and often painful, yet it is the path to wholeness. The empath learns to hold their darkness with compassion, understanding that it is part of their story, not their prison. In embracing these shadows, they dissolve the chains of shame and guilt that the narcissistic abuse had forged around their spirit. As the empath rises from this inner work, something miraculous happens, a rebirth. They emerge not as the broken soul who once silenced their voice, but as a radiant being infused with wisdom and purpose. Their empathy becomes a source of strength rather than vulnerability. They reclaim their power, their boundaries, and their divine essence. The silence that once shielded them now transforms into a voice that inspires, heals, and leads. To all who have endured this journey, know that your silence is a testament to your courage. It is the sacred space where your soul rebuilds itself, layer by layer, breath by breath, until you stand renewed, whole, and unshakable. In this rebirth lies your greatest gift, the power to create a life rooted in truth, resilience, and love. You are not defined by the pain inflicted upon you, but by the light you ignite within yourself in response. Trust this process, honor your silence, embrace your rebirth, for in doing so you become the beacon that guides others out of darkness and into the dawn of their own awakening. Empaths possess a rare and profound sensitivity that allows them to feel the emotions of others deeply and intuitively. This extraordinary ability, while a beautiful gift, also makes them uniquely vulnerable to the subtle yet devastating effects of narcissistic abuse. When an empath encounters a narcissist, the experience is not simply one of surface conflict or momentary discomfort. Instead, it reaches far deeper, striking at the very core of their being, their soul. This is not just emotional pain. It is a rupture so profound that it shakes the foundation of who they believe themselves to be. The empath's world is built on trust, connection, and an open heart that reaches out to others without hesitation. They naturally extend kindness, understanding, and compassion, often without expecting anything in return. But when narcissistic abuse occurs, all of these fundamental beliefs and values are challenged and dismantled. The narcissist's manipulation, gaslighting, and emotional exploitation create a disorienting environment where the empath's sense of reality begins to blur. They are made to question their own perceptions, feelings, and worth. This confusion goes beyond intellectual doubt. It penetrates the spirit, leaving an internal wound that is invisible yet deeply felt. Unlike many forms of trauma that are external and overt, the abuse an empath endures at the hands of a narcissist is subtle, insidious, and relentless. It infiltrates their inner world like poison seeping through cracks in a fragile vessel. The empath absorbs the narcissist's hostility, criticism, and control, often blaming themselves for the pain they feel. Their natural inclination to take responsibility for others' emotions becomes a trap as they internalize blame and shame. This self-blame compounds the injury, creating a cycle of suffering that seems impossible to break. The empath's sensitivity means they are highly attuned to energy and emotional undercurrents, so the emotional assault leaves them feeling drained, fragmented, and lost. The narcissist's constant need for admiration and control leaves the empath feeling invisible and unheard, as if their true self has been erased. This erasure is a wound that transcends physical pain. It is a spiritual void, a loss of self that cuts to the essence of who they are. The empath's soul, once vibrant and alive with empathy and compassion, becomes wounded and weary. This deep wounding often leads to a profound distrust, not only of the narcissist, but of others and even themselves. The empath questions their judgment and fears opening their heart again, worried that vulnerability will only invite further pain. This fear is a natural defense mechanism, but it also isolates the empath, cutting them off from the connection and love that once nourished their soul. They retreat inward, feeling misunderstood and alone, trapped in a silent battle with invisible scars. The internal rupture created by narcissistic abuse is not simply about lost trust or broken relationships. It is about the shattering of the empath's identity. Their sense of self becomes fragile and uncertain, as if the person they once knew has been shattered into countless pieces scattered across a dark landscape. The challenge for the empath then becomes how to gather these pieces and begin the slow, difficult work of rebuilding, not just to survive, but to reclaim their wholeness. This soul-level wounding demands more than surface healing. It requires an invitation to look deeper, to recognize that the pain endured is not the end of the story, but the beginning of a transformative journey. The empath's silence after such abuse is not withdrawal, but a sacred retreat, a necessary pause to listen to the whispers of their own soul beneath the noise of trauma. It is in this silence, in this sacred space, that the first seeds of healing and rebirth can take root. The empath's profound experience of pain, loss, and confusion is also an invitation to awaken to a new understanding of self and strength. While the rupture may feel like a breaking, it is also a call to rebuild with greater awareness, boundaries, and love for oneself. It is the soul's way of saying, "You must go silent now, so you may listen, heal, and rise." This deep internal rupture is the fertile ground from which a renewed, empowered self can emerge, one that honors the empath's unique gift without allowing it to be a source of suffering. In the silent aftermath of narcissistic abuse, the empath faces the sacred task of reclaiming their spirit, repairing the shattered trust within, and restoring the sense of identity. This journey is not easy, and the wound runs deep, but it is also the pathway to transformation, where pain becomes wisdom, and silence becomes the birthplace of a powerful new voice. When an empath falls silent after enduring narcissistic abuse, it is often misunderstood by others as withdrawal, avoidance, or even weakness. Yet this silence is far from mere absence or defeat. It is a profound and necessary act of self-preservation and healing, a sacred space where the empath begins to reconnect with their true self, a self that has been buried beneath layers of pain, confusion, and manipulation. In the aftermath of such trauma, silence is not an end, it is a beginning, a powerful invitation to rediscover and reclaim one's authentic voice. The empath's silence is a refuge, a quiet sanctuary where the soul can find rest after the exhausting storm of emotional assault. When constantly subjected to the overwhelming emotions of others, particularly a narcissist who exploits and invalidates their feelings, the empath's spirit becomes exhausted and fragmented. This exhaustion demands withdrawal, not from life, but from the chaos and toxicity that have invaded their inner world. The silence is a protective boundary, a conscious or unconscious retreat into a space where the empath can gather their scattered energies and begin to feel safe again. In this quiet, something remarkable begins to unfold. The silence acts as a mirror, reflecting back to the empath the parts of themselves that have been lost or suppressed. Away from the noise and manipulation, they begin to hear the faint whispers of their own truth. This truth is often obscured by years of self-doubt, guilt, and confusion implanted by the narcissistic abuse. But in the stillness, the empath can start to distinguish their own voice from the cacophony of others' demands and judgments. Silence, provides the empath with the essential gift of introspection. It is within this space that they begin to explore the depths of their experience, to understand the impact of the abuse on their emotions, thoughts, and beliefs. This inward journey is crucial, as it allows the empath to identify the patterns and wounds that have kept them trapped in cycles of pain and codependency. The act of turning inward, although challenging, becomes an empowering process of self-awareness and awakening. Moreover, silence invites patience and surrender. It is a pause that honors the natural rhythms of healing, recognizing that transformation cannot be rushed or forced. The empath learns to trust the process, allowing their heart and mind to slowly reconcile with the trauma, rather than pushing it aside or reacting impulsively. This surrender is not about giving up, but about yielding to a higher wisdom within, a wisdom that knows healing is gradual and must be nurtured with compassion and gentleness. This sacred silence is also a time for boundaries to be rebuilt. In the aftermath of narcissistic abuse, empaths often struggle with setting limits because their natural inclination is to please and protect others at their own expense. Within the quiet space of healing, they begin to reclaim their right to say no, to protect their energy, and to prioritize their well-being. The silence becomes a training ground for asserting their needs and desires without fear or guilt. Importantly, this period of silence is not isolation, but a form of deep listening to oneself, to the subtle cues of the body and soul, and to the greater currents of life. It is in this listening that the empath starts to realign with their core values, passions, and purpose. The silence becomes fertile ground for new insights, creativity, and spiritual growth, allowing the empath to emerge with renewed clarity and strength. Although silence may appear as emptiness or void from the outside, for the empath, it is a vibrant inner landscape where seeds of renewal are sown. It is the necessary space where they can process grief, release toxic energies, and cultivate self-love. This silence is a sacred act of honoring one's journey, acknowledging the pain but also affirming the power to heal and transcend. In essence, the silence that follows narcissistic abuse is a form of sacred retreat. It is a spiritual and psychological pause that enables the empath to recover their voice, reclaim their identity, and prepare for the next phase of their transformation. Far from being a sign of weakness, this silence is the quiet strength of a soul in the process of rebirth, quietly gathering its power to shine once again with authenticity, wisdom, and grace. The process of healing from narcissistic abuse is not linear or simple. Rather, it unfolds like a profound journey through 7 distinct stages of rebirth. Each stage represents a crucial phase in the transformation of the empath's soul, a passage from brokenness to wholeness, from confusion to clarity, and from silence to a powerful, renewed voice. These stages are not just psychological steps, but spiritual milestones that guide the empath toward reclaiming their true self and embracing their innate strength. The first stage begins with the shattering, the moment when the empath's world is upended by the overwhelming pain and betrayal inflicted by the narcissist. This stage is marked by a deep sense of loss, confusion, and disorientation. The empath's identity, once grounded in trust and openness, feels fractured, and their heart aches with the weight of shattered illusions. It is a time of mourning, a necessary acknowledgement that what once was can no longer be held on to. Though painful, this stage breaks open space for transformation by dismantling the false foundations that no longer serve the empath's growth. Following the shattering comes the stage of surrender. This is not surrender in the sense of giving up, but surrendering to the reality of the experience and the need for inner work. The empath begins to release resistance, allowing themselves to feel the full spectrum of emotions without judgment or avoidance. Surrender invites acceptance. Acceptance of pain, of imperfection, and of the unknown path ahead. It is a humble opening of the heart that sets the stage for deeper healing, teaching the empath that true strength often lies in vulnerability. The third stage leads the empath into the shadow, the hidden and often uncomfortable aspects of themselves that have been suppressed or denied. In this dark but fertile ground, the empath confronts their fears, shame, anger, and the parts of their psyche that the narcissistic abuse brought to the surface. This stage demands courage and honesty, as facing one's shadow is never easy. Yet it is essential for true rebirth because it allows the empath to integrate these parts rather than being controlled by them. Through this integration, the empath begins to reclaim fragmented pieces of their identity, recognizing that even their pain has a purpose in shaping their whole self. After navigating the shadow, the empath enters the stage of illumination. Here, insights begin to emerge, glimmers of understanding about the nature of their experience, their role in it, and the lessons to be learned. This stage is marked by awakening awareness, where the empath starts to see beyond victimhood toward empowerment. They gain clarity about boundaries, self-worth, and the dynamics of narcissistic abuse. Illumination lights the way forward, guiding the empath toward conscious choices that nurture healing and growth. The fifth stage is transformation, where the empath actively reshapes their inner and outer world. This involves rebuilding self-esteem, cultivating new healthy relationships, and establishing boundaries that protect their energy. Transformation is an ongoing process of shedding old patterns and beliefs that kept the empath trapped in cycles of pain. It is a creative phase where the empath begins to define themselves on their own terms, moving from reaction to intentional living. Next comes the stage of integration, where all the previous work coalesces into a harmonious whole. The empath learns to hold their new wisdom, strength, and compassion in balance. Integration involves accepting the totality of their journey, the wounds, the growth, the light, and the shadow, and embracing themselves fully. This stage signifies profound inner peace and self-acceptance, as the empath no longer fights against their past but honors it as part of their unique story. The final stage is rebirth, the emergence of the empath as a renewed, empowered being. This is the culmination of the journey, where the empath stands tall in their truth, radiating resilience and authenticity. They have reclaimed their voice and are no longer silenced by the echoes of abuse. This rebirth is not merely a return to what once was, but a profound evolution into a higher expression of self, one rooted in wisdom, compassion, and purpose. The empath's capacity to feel deeply remains, but it is now tempered by boundaries and self-love, allowing them to navigate life with grace and strength. Each of these 7 stages is essential and sacred, forming the architecture of the empath's transformation after narcissistic abuse. The journey is not quick or easy, but it is deeply meaningful. It invites the empath to move through pain with courage, to embrace vulnerability as strength, and to emerge on the other side with a renewed sense of self that honors their unique gift. This cycle of rebirth is not just healing, it is a sacred evolution, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of inner transformation. The journey through healing after narcissistic abuse requires the empath to face one of the most challenging and transformative aspects of inner work, the integration of the shadow. This shadow is not some external darkness, but the hidden, often denied parts within themselves, the fears, shame, anger, and wounds that have been buried deep beneath the surface of conscious awareness. For an empath, who is naturally compassionate and inclined to see the good in others, confronting these darker aspects can feel like stepping into unknown territory. Yet this confrontation is essential to transcend victimhood and awaken the true strength that lies within. The shadow is formed from all the parts of ourselves that we reject or disown because they seem unacceptable, painful, or threatening. In the context of narcissistic abuse, the empath's shadow often contains intense feelings of inadequacy, self-blame, and unworthiness, messages implanted by the narcissist's manipulation and control. The empath may also carry suppressed anger and grief that have nowhere safe to be expressed. Rather than running away from these emotions, shadow integration calls the empath to lean in with courage and compassion, recognizing these feelings as valid and important parts of their human experience. Integrating the shadow means acknowledging that these darker elements are not separate from the self, but are integral to wholeness. It involves breaking through the illusions that keep the empath trapped in cycles of shame or denial. This process can be uncomfortable and even painful because it requires vulnerability, the willingness to see oneself honestly without judgment. But in this vulnerability lies great power. The empath learns that accepting their shadow does not diminish their light. Instead, it enriches it by adding depth, authenticity, and resilience. Facing the shadow also means dismantling the false narratives created during abuse, the lies that tell the empath they are weak, unlovable, or broken beyond repair. Shadow work reveals these narratives for what they are, distortions born of trauma, not truth. By shining the light of awareness on these stories, the empath can begin to rewrite their internal dialogue with kindness and truth. This shift from self-criticism to self-acceptance is pivotal in breaking free from the hold of the narcissist's influence. Another vital aspect of shadow integration is the reclamation of personal power. Narcissistic abuse often leaves the empath feeling powerless and diminished, but by embracing their shadow, they reclaim parts of themselves that were denied or suppressed. This might include embracing anger as a valid and necessary emotion, or recognizing the need for boundaries as an act of self-respect rather than selfishness. The empath discovers that true power comes not from controlling others, but from owning their feelings, setting limits, and honoring their needs. Shadow work also fosters greater self-compassion. Empaths tend to be deeply self-critical, especially after abuse, blaming themselves for what happened or feeling responsible for others' pain. Through integration, they learn to treat themselves with the same gentleness and understanding they readily offer to others. This compassionate stance softens the internal landscape, creating space for healing and growth rather than judgment and despair. The process of integrating the shadow is ongoing. It is not a one-time event, but a continual practice of self-awareness and acceptance. Each time the empath encounters fear, shame, or pain, they have the opportunity to meet it with curiosity and kindness, rather than avoidance. This ongoing relationship with the shadow strengthens emotional resilience and deepens the empath's connection to their true self. Ultimately, shadow integration leads to a profound transformation. It dissolves the barriers between light and dark within the empath, revealing a fuller, richer sense of identity. No longer fragmented or divided, the empath embraces all parts of themselves, flaws and strengths, wounds and wisdom, with courage and grace. This wholeness, allows the empath to move beyond victimhood into empowerment, living from a place of authenticity and inner freedom. In embracing their shadow, the empath discovers that what once seemed like weakness is actually the source of their greatest strength. The wounds inflicted by narcissistic abuse become the crucible for profound healing, self-discovery, and rebirth. Through this process, the empath rises not only restored, but transformed, carrying within them the light of wisdom born from embracing their whole self. After enduring the profound trials of narcissistic abuse and moving through the difficult process of healing, the empath emerges into a new phase of life, a phase marked by renewal, empowerment, and profound self-awareness. This emergence is not merely a return to who they were before. It is a rebirth into a fuller, wiser, and stronger version of themselves. The journey through pain, silence, and shadow work culminates in the rediscovery of their voice and the reclamation of their power, allowing them to live authentically and with renewed purpose. This emergence is characterized by a deep sense of inner strength that comes from having faced the darkest parts of their experience and survived. The empath no longer views their sensitivity as a vulnerability to be hidden or suppressed, but as a sacred gift that connects them deeply to themselves and others. They have learned to protect their energy with clear boundaries and self-respect, understanding that empathy does not mean sacrificing their well-being for the sake of others. This empowerment is rooted in a solid foundation of self-love and acceptance, a foundation built through the long and often painful work of healing. One of the most transformative aspects of this renewed self is the clarity that comes from insight. The empath gains a profound understanding of the dynamics that led to the abuse, recognizing the patterns not as personal failings, but as opportunities for growth and learning. This clarity brings freedom from the chains of blame and shame, enabling the empath to move forward without carrying the heavy burdens of the past. They develop a compassionate perspective toward themselves and even toward the narcissist, not as a justification, but as a way to reclaim peace and agency. As the empath steps into this empowered state, their voice, once silenced by trauma and fear, begins to resonate with authenticity and strength. They speak their truth with confidence, guided by wisdom rather than reaction. This new voice carries the authority of experience tempered by compassion, offering not only healing for themselves but also inspiration and support for others who may be on similar paths. The empath becomes a beacon of resilience, demonstrating that transformation is possible even from the depths of pain. This rebirth also ignites a renewed connection to purpose and meaning. Having faced their shadow and integrated their wounds, the empath often finds themselves drawn to deeper spiritual or personal growth. They seek out experiences and relationships that nourish their soul rather than deplete it. Their life choices reflect a commitment to authenticity, balance, and alignment with their highest values. This purposeful living is a direct outcome of the self-awareness and empowerment gained through their journey. Importantly, this renewed self embraces imperfection as part of the human experience. The empath understands that wholeness is not about being flawless, but about embracing all facets of themselves, strengths and vulnerabilities alike. This acceptance fosters resilience, allowing the empath to navigate future challenges with grace and confidence. They no longer fear silence or setbacks, but view them as natural elements of ongoing growth. The emergence of this empowered self is also marked by a newfound capacity for healthy relationships. Boundaries are no longer negotiable but firm and respectful. The empath attracts connections that honor their worth and support their well-being, creating a network of mutual respect and genuine care. They are able to engage with others without losing themselves or becoming enmeshed in unhealthy dynamics. This balance enriches their sense of belonging and emotional security. Ultimately, this rebirth is a testament to the transformative power of resilience and self-love. the empath moves beyond the identity of victim or survivor to become a creator of their own life story. They embody a wisdom born from pain, a light forged in the fires of challenge, and a heart expanded by compassion. This emergence is not an endpoint, but a continual unfolding of potential and grace. The empath's journey through narcissistic abuse and healing leads them to a place of deep empowerment, where their voice is strong, their boundaries clear, and their spirit vibrant. They live not in the shadow of their past, but in the light of their own truth, radiant, authentic, and free. This new chapter is a sacred rebirth, a celebration of survival, and the limitless possibilities that arise when one dares to heal, grow, and rise. Thank you for sharing this meaningful journey with me. May your path ahead be filled with strength and light. Goodbye for now, and remember, your rebirth is your greatest power. As we come to the close of this reflection, remember that the silence that follows narcissistic abuse is not a void but a sacred space, an invitation to rediscover, heal, and transform. The journey of the empath through the 7 stages of rebirth is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, where pain becomes wisdom, darkness gives way to light, and brokenness unfolds into profound wholeness. This transformation is not just survival, it is a sacred evolution into a stronger, wiser, and more authentic self, one who honors their gift of empathy while protecting their soul with boundaries and self-love. Embrace this process with patience and compassion, knowing that within you lies the power to rise, reclaim your voice, and create a life of purpose and peace. Thank you for being present and open to this journey. May you walk forward with courage and grace, shining your true light. Goodbye for now, and may your path be filled with healing and strength.